Welcome into Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Get right to the action, man. It's a lot to break down tonight, and not a lot of time to do it. And you know how it is when you're doing this late night gig. Taking a run at it. We're going to start off with the Week 11 NFL recap. First and foremost, the Cowboys. We talked about the Thursday night game with the Browns and the unpleasantness with Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph. Both wrong. Garrett got an indefinite suspension. So there was rumors that Rudolph might get fined. I haven't heard anything about that after that. What else? Marquise Pouncey got suspended for a couple of games. Larry Ogunjobi got a suspension. But nothing on Rudolph yet. We'll see if that happens. But moving on. The Cowboys did reclaim the lead in the NFC East. They took out the Detroit Lions, who put up a hell of a fight with backup quarterback Jeff Driscoll. Matthew Stafford is dealing with those back fractures, so the Lions having to roll with Driscoll right now, who's actually not bad. He's a backup, but he's consistent. He's consistent in what he does. 59% completion, but that's just what he does. But my point is just that, like I said, the Cowboys won 35-27 in that game. Subsequently, the Eagles took an L to the face at the Patriots. Patriots got some revenge, not really. They would love to have had that been that Super Bowl a couple years ago, but they still won. The Patriots did 17-10 in Philly, no less. So, and the Eagles just don't look right. Carson Wentz is struggling this year. I'm not sure. They said that there's a graphic about how his struggles, especially in the fourth quarter, and how he's only got like one touchdown, and it's not been good for them, and it's really not been good because we all know that the guy who got them the Super Bowl ring, the victory, was Nick Foles, and he is no longer in the team. Although maybe we'll talk about Nick Foles a little bit more in depth later, but that'd be a weird thing to have happen for him to end up back there, wouldn't it? Maybe not out of the realm of possibility, but it'd be the wildest story ever. Wentz has been struggling lately, and it's not necessarily an easy fix for this team. They missed Deshaun Jackson, obviously. No Alshon Jeffrey, or Alshon Jeffrey has been banged up, missing time, and Jordan Howard missed this recent game here against the Patriots, and the Patriots just did what they do. It's funny because the Patriots are struggling themselves, but they just seem to keep catching these sort of breaks. Julian Edelman went off against them, but it just wasn't. Neither team was great offensively, but the Eagles just looked that dysfunctional overall. You just don't know what's going to happen to them long term. Again, they're missing a lot of pieces offensively, but it just doesn't look like anything close to the same group. And again, you've had people, we talked about this last week or so, you got people that are openly questioning whether or not the Eagles kept the right quarterback between Wentz and Foles. That's something that you're going to have to be looking down the road at. But back to this game, which I've gotten completely sidetracked on. The Cowboys taking the lead. They did this on the straight to Dak, man. Dak went out there and had himself a game, 444 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Zeke's not looking good. He's not looking explosive. He's not hitting the hole. He's not looking running with authority. That was the fear everyone had when he got the contract. Now he's got the contract and things are looking, I don't want to say down, because he's still 8th in rushing in the season, I believe. Still has 7 touchdowns. It's his fewest yards per game. But he's actually, I have the stat here. I got to pull that up, of course. Let me make sure I get it exactly right. Now, Dallas is first in yards per game. They're second in passing yards, only 7th in rushing. Zeke has 16 rushes, 45 yards in this game, and a touchdown. He had a fumble as well. He's 8th right now with 830 yards, but he's also got the lowest yards per game of his career. But he also has as many rushing touchdowns as he had all of 2018. That was the line that I wrote down. I want to make sure I got it exactly right. Now, they face the Patriots next, which is why I jumped to that Eagles game. I was going to cover it in order, but I felt like it might have been a little bit better to just go ahead and talk about that now, because they went from, Patriots could realistically just make the East that competitive all over again. So this is what they do. This is a time for Dak to go out there and prove it. Now, he had a little bit of a lull there where it looked like Jerry was smart for not paying him, but now things might be flipping back to Dak's favor, and where Jerry's going to have to open up that checkbook once again. So we'll see how that works out in the East. That's just something to keep an eye on, because, division races, the NFC East, it's a two-team race as it is. But if it can cut down to a 1 early on, then we might be looking at a whole nother situation and having a whole lot of different conversations about the Eagles than many people thought coming into the year. So that's just, again, something for the Colts retook the AFC South lead. They own the tiebreaker with the Houston Texans because they did beat them a couple of weeks ago. They actually face them next week, so that'll be interesting. They got Jacoby Brissett back, did the Colts, which was a big boon for them because Brian Hoyer, for as much as he is I don't want to say sustainable, but as good of a backup as he is, you clearly see his deficiencies when he throws turnovers in bunches, and they had a couple of those for the Colts while Brissett was recovering from that knee injury, but they came out and beat the Jaguars 33-13. Now, really, it wasn't on Jacoby who did it. It was more on the Colts. And really, when you look at the Colts, what's interesting about them is that they aren't really explosive in any, or they're not really stand out in any category. 16th in points per game, 14th in points against, 22nd in yards per game, 28th in passing yards, but they're 4th in rushing yards per game. And that's where the difference is. They're just dominating on the ground. They actually lost Marlon Mack to an injury not early in this one because he put up a pretty solid stat line. But they lost Marlon Mack in this game. 14 carries for 109 for him. But then Jordan Williams comes in and he gets 13 carries for 116 yards. So they can just run the ball. The scheme that Frank Reich has implemented is working. That offensive line, the investment there is paying off. And I think that's more important than anything. The Bills circle the wagons. They won against the Miami Dolphins. The Bills can beat bad teams. They've been beating up on bad teams, but they have a rough stretch actually coming up their direction. Just looking ahead, not this next week because they play Denver next week, but then they go to Dallas. They host the Ravens. They go to Pittsburgh, which despite their struggle still has a pretty tough defense. And then they have to go to New England as well. So that's not something to necessarily be, you beat the Dolphins. You enjoy. It's a week-to-week league. Any team can win any given week, so I guess you enjoy it there. Josh Allen had himself a day, but they still have yet to beat a team that's going to be making the playoffs. So we see this all. It happens across the league. Teams face on poor teams. That's, I guess, the first stage in getting to becoming a real contender. For Miami, the only question I really have about them is were the wins worth it? Because you know that they were jockeying, vying for that first overall pick, and now they're pretty much out of it. I don't necessarily see the Bengals winning any more games at all. Any more would imply if they won a game. They haven't won a game yet. So I'm not sure if they have a ton of picks, so they can move up and get whoever they want to get if it really comes down to it. So maybe that's what the logic is. It doesn't really matter. Try to show that you can win, I guess. I'm not sure. It just feels like they kind of got stuck in between for a couple weeks there. And now they're just back to being terrible. I don't know. That's one, again, to keep an eye on. They do face the Giants in week 15 and the Bengals in week 16. So maybe one of those games provides an opportunity for them to get a victory or to get another victory if that's what they're doing now. Again, I'm not sure why you would, but they clearly aren't following the standard thought processes that I would necessarily implement in this situation. So who knows? Anything's possible, right? Right. According to KG. The Vikings rallied back from down 20-0 at half to overtake the Broncos 27-23. They're sitting pretty firmly in the one of those wild card spots right now. The New Orleans Saints trampled the Buccaneers 34-17. They got back to their winning way. They needed that after that stunning upset to the Atlanta Falcons, who, by the way, went out and put a hurting on the Carolina Panthers 29-3. What? Where, I don't know where this came from. Matt Ryan, 311 yards, only threw one touchdown. Calvin really had 143 yards. Carolina, though, Kyle Allen threw 4 interceptions, and I really want to know, as a person who has a vested interest in this particular quarterback situation, will Cam Newton be getting cut or not? I just asking for 52 guys in Chicago that are pretty down right now. Just want to know, out of curiosity. I see your boy Kyle Allen, who was being hailed as the next Panthers quarterback, very prematurely, might I add. Something that was noted here more than once. is Cam getting cut? Because if you're pumping the brakes, then that means you got to look elsewhere. The pivot might need to happen a little bit sooner. I just want to know because there's a lot of people who think that Cam would be a great fit. Cam has said that he would be open to it if that's something that ultimately worked out. We know how that is. That's just open-ended player speak. Doesn't really mean anything. But that would have been nice to see. We'll see how it works out now. And of course, it was one game, but Kyle Allen has been, in my opinion, not spectacular enough to warrant all of this praise about how great the Panthers are going to be now that he's the one running the show. So, yeah, that's that for that. The Jets and the Redskins faced off, and really the only thing that I got out of that are the Redskins are a hot mess, but more importantly than that, the Jets are just less bad. I think we've been having this competition with the Redskins for a little while now, but what makes the Redskins such a hot mess is Dwayne Haskins, rookie quarterback Dwayne Haskins, went to his offensive line, and there's a video circulating on Twitter asking them, what does he need to do to help out, to make things better, to make their jobs easier, to help them help him. And the look of disinterest, the laughing off, it was foreign. It was almost a foreign nature to them, and it's more an indictment on them than on him. I don't care what anyone. I don't think anyone has tried to spin it that way. But if anybody's trying to spin it on, he needs to just sit down somewhere and work on this. No, clearly the offensive line has already given up on him and the team as a whole, and that was probably a sign of the times when the coach got fired, the rookie who they swore up and down wasn't ready finally got put in. They probably realized that the season was over, but I mean, it was just a sad image to see Haskins out there pleading with his offensive lineman, just let me know what I got to do, and them just kind of looking at him with the deer in the headlights, kind of what do you mean? What can you do? For the Jets, they got a long way to go. They beat up on this team, but it's the Redskins, so it's kind of hard to completely say, hey, they got something going here. They did what they had to do. They got the victory. Sam Darnold did throw 4 touchdowns. That's something, right? That's the thing. Two bad teams. Again, they just the bigger picture to me, but as far as wins and losses here, or judging the level of either of these teams, the Jets were less bad. That's the biggest thing I think you could take away from that. Talked about the Falcons beating the Panthers. The Texans and the Ravens faced off, Texans and the Ravens faced off. And let me just say, the headline for this one is unequivocally, and I think beyond the shadow of a doubt, Lamar for MVP. Now I know, I jumped off for a week. I went on the Russell Wilson hype train, and I disregarded my own insight on the situation with how he went against that 49ers defense, which is legit, by the way, very legit. But I think what else I've seen is that when head to head, and we've seen it over the past month, Lamar Jackson has taken down not these quarterbacks, but taking their teams out, come out victorious over their teams. The Patriots, not in this order, obviously, but the Patriots, the Seahawks, and the Texans, and in convincing fashion. And has looked good doing so. I'm not sure how you can say it's not him anymore. I know I wavered. I was on the Russ hype train, but again, head to head, and we could talk about whose defense is better and whatever, but he's still putting up points on his own. Like, that's aside from the defense making the other quarterbacks look worse. He's still doing his thing at the same time, and that you can't take that away from him, despite the constant knocks on how it's unsustainable and this, that, and the third, and every expected trope that you can that you would think you would hear when talking about a quarterback such as Lamar Jackson. The 49ers did hold on to beat the Arizona Cardinals 36-26. The Raiders took out the Bengals 17-10. And I'm leaving this up here for now. Lamar for MVP, just in case you forgot. Like I told you about the Patriots beating the Eagles 17-10. The Bears, though. This hurts because I had such high hopes for this team coming into this season, but clearly that's gone off the rails now. They lost to the Los Angeles Rams 17-7, and all you can really say about them is that they've collapsed, they've imploded. Even the people who prognosticated them to fall off, I don't think would have seen it going this way. The defense hasn't been bad, but they haven't been great, and that's been a problem because the offense has been terrible. So they couldn't withstand any loss of any level of power of dominance from the defense because they weren't good last year, the offense. So the Bears have now lost 5 of their last 6. They're for all intents and purposes, I believe, out of the playoffs. I believe they might be officially out, but they're for all intents and purposes out of the playoffs because there's no way they're making a comeback to do anything, and they have no right to. Mr. Trubisky finally got pulled. They're calling it a hit pointer, but even the circumstances around that just are dysfunctional and sound poorly planned, poorly executed, just like the season has been. We've run through the gambit on Last Word on Pro Football, and I always forget to do this, but the Twitter handles as @JoshGBuck. On Facebook @Jukes and Jumps. Hit the website jukesandjumpers.wordpress.com, and of course the email is jukesandjumps@gmail.com. But I wrote for Last Word on Pro Football that the Bears season has gone into hibernation, and we've gone through the gambit of putting the blame on for personnel, from the offensive line to the receivers to the quarterback to the running back, calling out the defense. I've called out the coaching staff. I've called out everybody, and even Ryan Pace, but it's to the point where all you can kind of do is write an open letter or just kind of throw the ideas out there and wonder if upper management, and I mean like, franchise altering decision management beyond Pace is catching wind of all these things being said and these questions being asked. Because one thing that I noted in the column or in the article is that while this is year 3 for Trubisky and only year 2 for Matt Nagy, and the Bears are just 12-4, this is Pace's 5th season. And part of the reason why they went 12-4 is because they had that last place schedule because they were so bad for the other years prior. So, and then the first round, the record of draft picks for Pace in the first round is just below subpar. It's pretty sad. And the one that is still, the jury's still out on, is Roquan Smith. And even he has had some up and down moments this season. So that's like it's just more questions piled upon this group that had so much promise, looked so promising last season, only to see it just stagger out in this way. And Eddie Pinheiro, an early favorite here, fan favorite, just a feel good story, has devolved into Cody Parkey light, and it's just really getting scary, man, because it was, even when things were going bad earlier this year, that was one thing that was like, but they figured out the kicker, right? They spent all this time worrying about the kicker and neglected to work on the offense, and defense has been hit with injuries, but the kicker's still kicking. He's still hitting them kicks. Not anymore. And now people are calling for his job, and it's just like, man, at this point from last year, Parkey had actually made a higher percentage of his kicks. They both missed 5, but Parkey still made a higher percentage of his kicks, and he hadn't cost the Bears as many games as Pinheiro has. So it's been a rough stretch here for the young man. Hopefully he picks it up for his sake going forward. There's not switching at this point. There's no point. But yeah, it's just been bad. You just have to wonder who goes, who comes back. I said at minimum Trubisky has to go. I would think they have to consider moving on from Pace as well. And if Pace goes, then Nagy's more than likely also gone. I wouldn't be upset with either one of them. Not wanting to see anybody go, but I just feel like, again, 5 years with Pace on the job, 5 first-round, or not 5 first-round picks. We know that that's not the case. Won't be having one this year either. Raiders are laughing. But 5 years of him on the job and seeing where this team is at now and how fluky, when you all things consider how fluky 2018 was, it's just not it's not beyond reason to say that they should just clean house and try to tear this thing down. And that includes possibly looking into doing something about getting Khalil Mack off the books. A move that looked so great when it was made, and you would make 1,000 times over if presented with it, was just poorly executed with the personnel. Otherwise, again, they misevaluated the quarterback situation. I'm sure everybody's seen the Sun-Times or the Chicago Tribune article illustrating how everything went down with them drafting Trubisky. It's a bad time for the franchise right now. And they look really dysfunctional, and it's worse than the Trestman era, worse than the Fox era. And then you hear Fox won at Watson. It's just all bad. It's all bad. And the Bears have to just kind of limp their way to the rest of the season. They face the Giants, then the Lions, but then they got to go. They ended on a 4-game heater of Dallas at Green Bay, host the Chiefs, and then at Minnesota. Their only hope is that a couple of those teams are resting players down the stretch and they can, sneak out of there with a W. But I don't see it happening because two of the four at the end are divisional opponents, and the Vikings already got beat once. You know how that goes, and the Packers just like to beat the Bears, so period. And then the Chiefs, that's Andy Reid. It's going to be tough. It's ugly, man. And I would like to say I have faith in them to fix it going forward, but it's hard to say that because they haven't shown that they can necessarily build anything sustainable. And then to wrap up the NFL segment, the Chiefs did outlast the Los Angeles Chargers. Phillip Rivers threw 4 picks tonight, including one that ultimately sealed the game. Tried to battle the Chargers back. It just was a real battle for him most of the night. 1 touchdown for him, 353 yards in the air. Mahomes wasn't great either, 182 yards, 1 touchdown, but he only threw 1 pick, so that could be your game right there, just maybe. Really the point of this one, because it doesn't ultimately matter. The Chargers season is about as cooked as the Bears is. They've had tons of injuries to deal with, and the holdout of Melvin Gordon didn't help anything either. But the larger thing that I wanted to talk about here was the Phillip Rivers is mentioned as an option for the Bears possibly next year, and I don't want to see that because we've seen quarterbacks that are prone to throw turnovers and how that works out for this city. And Phillip Rivers is also a guy that will talk trash. He actually got a delay of this game because he was too busy jawing and not worried about getting back to the huddle with his teammates. So those are just things that the Bears need to avoid. I've said that if they go after somebody, I would like to see them go after Cam, but I think maybe Teddy Bridgewater is somebody who should be more of a priority for them, age-wise. The ease with which they can get him, assuming of course he leaves New Orleans, because there's no guarantee that happens and Drew Brees plays anymore. But just Phillip Rivers is not he's going to the Hall of Fame, but moments like these are the issues that a lot of people have with the process of Hall of Fame voting, and how when you look back, it doesn't necessarily show how critical some of these moments are. These moments where the giveaways happen, where the bunches happen, and how backbreaking they could be. But that is what it is. It's just, again, the broader point was that if Rivers is to leave Los Angeles and land elsewhere next season, the Bears are not a team that should be trying to do this. I get it. He's better than Trubisky, yes, but we've seen those picks are going to hurt. They're going to happen when they hurt the most. Jay Cutler proved that that's not something that Chicago wants. So just don't. That's probably not the best way to go. And Phillip Rivers is much older than Jay was when he got here, and much more stuck in his ways. So I'm just not sure that that's a viable option. We're going to switch gears slightly to the NBA, and I'm going to make a little. My bad. You know what I'm saying? I was going to start off this one talking about the Knicks were still the judge of the NBA because they don't have the best record to start the year. But they won 2 of their last 3. They won tonight, more importantly, which is what made me have to take a double take and say, wait a second, let me reevaluate what I'm going to say about these young guys. They went out there and beat the Cavaliers 123-105. Julius Randle had himself a solid game. That's what you want to. That's what you like to see. I like Julius as a player. He's 12 of 17 from the floor, 30 points. He was a plus 24, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, only 1 turnover. He had 2 steals and a block. And then you have Marcus Morris dropping in 23. The Knicks are still bad. They're not a good team. That's not what I was trying to get at. But they had to go back and look at what they're 4-10 on the season, by the way. Had to go back and look at what their recent schedule was and realize, like, okay, let me not just go ahead and bomb on them because they're actually not as bad as I thought. They're still terrible, which is funny. Because reading back, I thought that they were just, like winless still in the season. But I can't laugh too hard. The Bulls aren't much better, and we'll talk about that in a second too, because this is it's just as sad as the Bears season is gone. They're still bad, but I had to explain how I couldn't write it up and then not show it, with how blatantly how way off base I was, at least in the short term. You can only be, I'm only gonna take so many lumps on that one. But the next one, the Nets, and the question behind it, and I talked about this briefly on Friday's episode, was their gamble worth it? They fell to the Pacers, 115-86. Kyrie Irving did not play in this game. And you just look at where the Nets are. And I believe they started rough last year too, but more importantly, we know how they finished, and you just wonder if they did too much movement with the roster that had gotten so much better, bringing in Kyrie Irving and then Kevin Durant, who's not even playing this year, or DeAndre Jordan. And I think that's a fair question to ask because they are I don't want to say struggling, but they are at 5-8. They're definitely not thriving. And while we talked about Boston and how they've ascended to 11-2 now, there it is. Had to get the everything back going on. I don't know what happened there. Switched over from the Nets gamble, and we're talking now about the moving on from the Nets, talking about Carmelo and the Trailblazers and how the Blazers need something to happen because they're really struggling this year, sitting at 5-9 right now. CJ and Dame's been a two-man show, but they haven't been getting it done themselves. The management made an investment in this backcourt, and it just has not paid dividends. And that was something that I actually worried about in writing juiceandjumpers.wordpress.com is how long can they sustain this? We've seen that this backcourt not get it done, and they didn't really improve. So you kind of just wonder, was it smart to invest in something that is beating your head against the wall? Definition of insanity, I think, is what they call it. And I'm happy for them. Maybe Melo helps him out. Rumor has he'll be having a role coming off the bench, and that's good. I just hope that it works out because both sides need this, and if it works out, it'll be good for both sides. So, yeah, just Melo, man. Happy to see him back in. I did skip over, and I got to go back to it real quick because I have to eat. I would be quick to give up my mea culpas when I make a mistake. I'm not going to ever be one to run away from it, and that'd be the Raptors and what they're having me eat some crow right now. They won 132-96 tonight over the Charlotte Hornets. They've been good. I don't want to say I want to be mad, and I want to call them out for being not as good as many might want to say they are. They're 9-4 right now. Pascal Siakam has been balling flat out. My boy Fred VanVleet has also been playing very well. To be proper about this, but you just I was dead off. I was way off because I said they'd be closer to trading away players than they would be contending, and that's not happened. I don't know why I figured that one player or two players would make such a difference, but I just felt that was my bold prediction that they would be out of the playoffs altogether, and the Bulls would make it. I think this might be just some comeuppance where they're not only going to be probably in the place, they're going to do well with the combination of Siakam and Anunoby with the likes of Van Vliet also. But the Bulls are also struggling. Charlotte had been getting a lot from Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier. That's an interesting situation to watch because Rozier got the big contract, but Graham has looked like the better point guard for much of the season. So that's something to keep an eye on going forward. And then Luka Doncic hit a big money shot three over on the Spurs to win that game 117-110. He joined the LeBron James as the youngest players to ever score a 40-point triple-double. Luka had 42, 12, and 11. The Mavs aren't a team that's a threat to anybody just yet. They're 8-5. They are second in division. Maybe they sneak into the playoffs. I'm not sure if they have enough firepower though to hang with the big dogs. I told you I think it's a two-team race ultimately in the West. It'll be the Lakers and the Clippers in the playoffs. I know we got the Jazz and I know you got the Nuggets and all that. That's fine. But when it comes down to it, it's going to be those two teams, and neither one of them are actually looking great right now. And that was actually, I should have switched graphics to the Luka story talking about the Spurs dynasty. Before I actually jump to the Los Angeles thing, the Spurs are 5-9 and in the middle of a realization that time might be expiring on this group and maybe ultimately on what we've known as a pop dynasty. Now I know it's become fashionable. When it becomes fashionable, when coaches get along in years and the teams start to break down to push them out the door. But it's just really a question: is Pop going to want to stick around for a rebuild? There were already rumors floating around about the Spurs trading DeMar DeRozan to Orlando. Now that would logically bring back some kind of younger player that maybe entices Pop to stick around a little bit longer than he might. But 5-9 and looking like they're going to struggle to make the playoffs this year. That again, it's early still, so let me not, I'm not digging my heels in on this one, but just looking at it right now, that's just a question that I think has to be asked. I talked about the Celtics a little bit. I said how they're really better without the stars, and the Kyrie Irving situation, and how the Nets. Now he didn't play tonight, even though they lost. But the important thing is just that the Nets have struggled while the Celtics are sitting there looking pretty. In their division, they won 99-85 over the Suns, and despite the loss, the Suns actually looked much better this season now. 7-5. Again, I can't stress it enough because it really applies to every situation, good or bad. But it's so early. It's just good to see, though, the Suns are playing 500 ball and above. Now it's only 2 games, and again, early word of the season right now. But you do notice. And just to harp, not to ride on Kyrie, but you just do notice how much better the Celtics always seem to do whenever he's not, without him. that's one of those things that's kind of undeniable. But I do want to talk about the Suns and the T-Wolves. The Suns had to start sitting at 7-5, and then you got the Minnesota Timberwolves who beat the Utah Jazz, by the way. A lot of teams' finals favorite, Western Conference Finals favorite, 112-102 did the Timberwolves. They are 8-6 and sitting at third in their division. Now they're going to need a lot more consistency than that if they're going to get anything accomplished. They got big games from Karl-Anthony Towns, 29 points, 11 of 23, 7 of 15 from 3-point. He was a plus 13. He had 13 boards and 5 assists. Then you got Jeff Teague added 21 points, 15 points from Robert Covington, 14 points from Martin off the bench. The Timberwolves and the Suns are both two teams that are, I think, more sizzle than steak at this point. They're going to look good for a long stretch to begin, but I think the wear and tear of a long season is going to get on these younger stars, and maybe they might be tired of losing. That happens, and they go a little bit further, and they're at that point where they can carry their teams a lot, but neither one of them have a lot of star power. The Suns will get DeAndre Ayton back not too long in the distant future, not too far out in the future, but they don't have him right now, and I think they're going to struggle ultimately because they're just still such a very young team. The Timberwolves are a little bit older. Andrew Wiggins has been playing much better this year without Jimmy Butler around. Seems to be a little bit liberated in things that he wants to get done. But it's still just a team that, I'm not sure that you see the complete team that's going to be able to take over. Towns. Well, I'm looking at their season stats right now. Towns is averaging 27, Wiggins 25. They're getting 13 from Teague and Covington apiece, 10 from Layman. Wiggins is having a really good year, and I think that might be one of the things that if they are propelled to a much better season than anybody would have probably anticipated for them, it'll be because he's having his best scoring season yet and his best shooting season yet. So again, it's early, but that's what you want to see from a former first overall pick in the draft. So maybe if Wiggins has finally found his stride, then I would say that the Timberwolves actually have more staying power than the Suns do. And that's for that. The Clippers did beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 90-88. That played without Kawhi Leonard, who has been on load management earlier to start the season, which has people wondering if they're going to even be able to make the playoffs. Some people, just in tongue in cheek, but wondering how they're going to be able to manage through it. And again, I just mentioned it. Same thing with the Lakers. You're going to see them. They surprised and have come out to get this hot start, this early lead. But I figured that they would be a team that would be sitting a lot of players for a lot of games and might fall in the rankings because of it, the regular season standings because of it, but ultimately they'd be healthy for the playoffs, and that's all they care about, and then they'll just run roughshod over anybody who's not the other LA squad, depending on who you're talking about. So they got 18 from Paul George, 12 from Zubac. Montrezl Harrell poured in 28 off the bench. The Clippers, those two, Harrell and Lou Williams, even though Lou only had 11 tonight, they got the win. That's all that matters. But this is a game with a lot of emotion. Chris Paul facing his former team, Danilo Gallinari and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander facing their former team. Paul George was dapping up guys after the game. Paul George obviously making his return. They came to LA, but facing his former team. It wasn't it wasn't extra chippy. It didn't seem like guys were too upset that he got out of there. So, I mean, maybe that's just more telling of the state than it is of how they actually feel about him. But I should flip that. It's probably more telling about how they feel about him than the state of things there. But it's definitely one of those things where it's like, look, I get it. That's how it looked on TV initially when you see them all dapping him up and everything like that. And then we're going to close it out doing a little bit of rant about these here Chicago Bulls. They dropped a game 115-101 to the Milwaukee Bucks, a game that they actually were down by about 4 late in the fourth quarter. They ended up getting outscored 31-20 in the fourth quarter. What we've seen from this team, they finally gave rookie center Daniel Gafford some minutes, and he came out and responded with 21 points on 20-12 shooting. He had 5 rebounds. He was a -4. He had 2 blocks, though. What he gave was energy and rim protection, something that has been seriously lacking, despite how steady Wendell has been this season. And I was one who was not trying to give him many props. Now, he did struggle tonight. He only had 6 points and he had 8 boards. But Gafford is somebody, I don't know what took Boylen so long to get him going. Now, we know Boylen's rotations have not been the best this season, but this is something that seemed like a no-brainer. Just watching the kid move, I don't know what – I tweeted it out. What took Boylen so long to get Gafford minutes? How was it so hard? What made it so difficult for him to find some kind of time to get this kid on the floor? But overall, man, the team struggled. The starters all struggled. Zach was 4-16, only had 11 points. He had 8 rebounds and 4 assists. Lowry continues to have a dismal season. 9 points, 2 of 12, 0 for 4 from 3, 8 boards though. Hutch was 7 points, 2 of 8, 1 of 3 from deep. Wendell again had 6 and 8. He was 3 of 6. Sato had 5 points on 2 of 6. Now, notable about Sato is actually he was pulled or didn't see the floor late in the game, and actually in favor of Ryan Archie-Diacono, who had 12 points on 4 of 7 shooting. He was 4 of 5 from 3. And Archie was actually one of only 2 Bulls players who was a net plus positive and plus minus, him and Thaddeus Young. Thaddeus has moments where you just wonder what he's doing. Now, he's usually a solid player. He's very smart, very good defender, very active. But there are just like these brief moments where you're like, Thaddeus, what the hell? And it's similar to what you see from what you saw from Chris Dunn before, and what you see from Wendell Carter a lot of times. There's almost I don't want to say disinterest, but it just seems like the things are moving too fast sometimes. Now, it's probably different reasons for all 3 of them. Thaddeus is again, he's been overall. He was one of the only positives and plus minus on the team tonight. So this is not an overall knock on him. It's just odd to see a veteran such as him, have those moments where he kind of spaces out. As for Wendell, I'm not sure he's a center. Like, I really feel like he's a power forward, but and not one that really fits in today's game. The Bulls have struggled to score down low. He struggles protecting the rim, which is why it was great to see Gafford go down there and get it going. He should be in shape, and he's been the most consistent, but even his consistency has left something to be desired. And again, he had double-digit points for the past 4 games prior to this, and then 1 game down, and then he had 4 games before that. So it's not like he's been, like I said, he's been very consistent. The concern here, and I know I'm harping on him, but the concern here is really Lowry. Zach had bad moments, and even his good moments have been marred by hero ball, where his shot selection goes out the window. I don't know what he thinks is going on. I think I was actually had a back and forth on Twitter today about things Zach could be a very good secondary option on the team where he knows he has to defer. But as that primary guy, he's going to gun, and he's going to take poor shots. And he sat for much of the fourth quarter as Boylen rightfully rewarded the bench guys who had got them back in the game. Kobe caught miniature fire, 13 points and 5 of 15, even though that his green light, he's got an evergreen. He has a forest of evergreen in his head for as far as what he can shoot. That might be from the coach to just get it out, but because they seem to be willing to let him just shoot it. But Zach sat for most of the second half, and then came in and immediately forced up a shot that the Bulls needed to get to I believe it was to draw themselves closer. It was to bring it to within 2 points, or I believe that's the case. If not, take a 1-point lead. And he just forced up one, and that's just something we've seen all too often from him. At this point, some have wondered if he should be traded. Possibly, I wouldn't be against it, but I think that he's a very valuable member, and the Bulls' master plan, again, is for them to try to land Giannis. Now, I'm not saying that'll happen. I'm just saying Giannis sliding into that 3 spot, surrounded by Zach, Kobe, Lowry, and even Wendell with maybe you put Gafford down there. Who knows? But with Giannis there at the swing, at the wing position, that's dangerous. I'm just saying, I'm not sure that's how it works out. It likely won't, because Milwaukee has a chance to sign him, and the rest of the NBA is going to be on his heels as well. And but the Bulls miss Otto, despite how bad he's been this year too. Yeah, it was just a rough game. Chris Dunn continues to have a pretty good season, though. He had 9 assists, 6 rebounds. He had another steal. He got in foul trouble, just like Lowry got in foul trouble, just like Wendell had some foul issues. Sado had some foul issues. It was like, again, though, the other good thing, one of the silver linings about it, Gafford, White catching fire when it mattered most. That was important. And then Sado not playing down the stretch in favor of Archie. Hutchison has been off too. I know he's not a great shooter, but he just seemed to be. He put up a couple of 4 shots. This team just lacks real leadership and guidance, and that goes back to the head guy. Also, not coincident or not incidentally, not that's not even the right word that I'm trying to look for, but not for nothing. But the Bulls have the same record right now, 4-10, that they had last season through 14 games, 4-10. And I posed a question a few weeks ago: what happens if after 24 games, after 24 games, the Bulls have the same exact record? What do they do then? Because they made the early investment in Boylen after seeing not much improvement. Now, you could say the Bulls have had better defensive numbers. They're much more active steals, this and a third. The offense just hasn't clicked yet, and that hasn't translated into wins, which is probably exactly what they're going to say. But, I mean, damn. To get the exact same results, man, that's not what you want. This ain't what you want, Roland. So that's, it's early. It's early, and again, it's going to be early till it's not. But right now, it's not looking overly promising for the Chicago Bulls this season, or for any of the predictions that they made, and that I backed them up on of them making it to the postseason. Hopefully, they can right the ship and get things going, but it's not looking good right now. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. If you're going to follow me, man, on Twitter at Joshy Buck, Facebook at Jukes and Jumps. Hit the website, jukesandjumpers.wordpress.com. Email me at jukesandjumps@gmail.com. And, of course, as always, read the stuff. Last Word on Pro Football, and Pippen ain't easy for the Bulls knowledge, and little trigger happy on that one. Until next time, though. Peace.